We look at our world at this time, and in many, many countries and even homes, a massive amount of the budget is dedicated to defense spending, protecting citizens of the country or residents of the home. A world of mistrust and fear, insecurity, and deeply convinced the enemy is outside, others. But when I'm very quiet and go inside, I start to realize what truly needs protection. It's not from any threat outside. And it can't be protected through physical means. That stage of inner peace, personal dignity, self-respect, generosity of heart, humanity. These are the most precious items I possess. And it's completely up to my own self-care to protect them, to even realize they are worth protecting, not threatened by anyone or anything, most often falling prey to forgetting, carelessness, inattentive. What is my defense spending for such a stage? It's completely free, but I have to commit to a regular practice patiently over a long period of time, deepening the experience of these qualities, creating deep rooted inner peace, deep rooted self respect, deep rooted humanity. When the roots are deep, it becomes stable within myself, no matter what. A regular daily practice over a long period of time. Commitment, a commitment to self-care. That's the entire budget for defense spending on what is most precious to the human spirit. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and good evening to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And tonight's session is about inner protection. I was listening to the commentary, and it was interesting. It was being shared about feeling that the source of the threat, or you call it the enemy, or whatever we want to call it, is out there. And I'm not sure if you shared it, but I was like, isn't it scary to be if the enemy was inside your house? And so, about this topic, actually, was really thinking about, creating an inner world, and was actually thinking about some of the first students in the study, and you were talking about commitment, and I was thinking about also what is the capacity that's needed. So perhaps maybe we could share a bit more about the commitment you were talking about, and then we could look at capacity afterwards. You could share more about what you were um, feeling in terms of what commitment means.
Om Shanti. I don't know why I've noticed this off and on, but over the years, but it seems lately it's almost a constant kind of signal or feeling I'm experiencing, a feeling that empowerment is so critical. We use the word master. We even go and say master of the world, but master, mastery, and the opposite is victim or slave. I don't know why I'm feeling that a lot lately, maybe because it seems that increasingly there's just so much unpredictability in our world, things happening all the time. I think in the last couple of days, I've just constantly been seeing emergency medical response teams, racing me this morning again, just constant. So it seems there's a lot going on, and that it's probably very anxiety inducing at best and frightening at most for souls to feel like things are getting a little bit chaotic. And um, as long as I believe that things are happening to me, that feeling will continue. I'm getting less and less control of the outer world, so it's feeling a greater and greater threat. So it seems really important at the foundation to sort this out, whether I'm a victim or a master. And that's not like a concept, but actually based on spiritual laws. Are we victims or are we masters, creators of what's going on? It's very important to sort that out. And I think the original students figured that out. They realize that they are masters, creators of what's going on, that their actions really shaped what was happening. And so that's very exciting. That's very empowering. And they had complete faith that that's how things work. And so they started to conduct themselves and study and spiritually train themselves in alignment with that complete faith that we are creators or masters of what's going on. We're not slaves or victims. So it was really magical to watch because there was so much opposition, so many attacks, so many threats, but they stayed very stable and committed to this feeling that my inner stage is the most powerful response. So they focus their attention on cultivating that inner stage.
It's interesting what you're sharing in terms of really seeing themselves as creators, masters. How do you feel that that affects this aspect of commitment? Because sometimes we hear the word commitment and it makes us run the opposite directions.
Well, that's where I think it gets very interesting because I do feel souls are very committed to something. They can be quite committed to feeling they're a victim of circumstances, very, very committed. So it's not that we lack the capacity to make a commitment. It's just, am I making commitments to things that are actually productive? That is, when we say productive, it's not a judgment or subject, it's moving me in the direction that I want to go. So if I want to feel peace, if I want to feel safety, if I want to feel secure and happiness, am I committed to things that are going to make that happen? Sometimes we commit very strongly to things that have the very opposite effect from our objectives. So we need to check is, do I have the right method or aim for where I would like to go?
It's interesting. Then you were talking a lot about empowerment, and power has been on my mind so much lately, but at the level of assessing if that's what I'm actually experiencing. So it's also quite interesting when you were sharing about whatever is going to enable me to move forward. Because I remember when I was taking in physics class, I believe, and we were learning about in science the definition of power. And excuse me for those who are in sciences, maybe I'm getting the definition wrong, but I vaguely remember it was about being able to change directions, to be able to move position. And that was a sign, and energy wise, that there is actually power being utilized. But I was thinking that a lot in terms of when you were saying to be able to feel more peaceful. Because one of the things that has come up so much with regular students or even new students is that they're grappling with, I'm learning things, but it just seems so intellectual. I have no power to change anything. So, what do you feel it is that the original students, Brahma Baba, some of the daddies, like what was it that they were able to do internally? So, what they were enacting was power and not something intellectual.
Definitely, we have to respect the types of souls they were in their own right. But I do sometimes feel it was a bit of a blessing that they were what we would call uneducated. Um, they really, faith was a big player in all of this, and they really followed the directions with complete faith. One of the symbols that we use in the study, or really it could apply to anything in life, is this idea of moths surrendering to a flame and then some sort of circle around and move away. So it's interesting, but I'm not, whether it's fear or lack of faith, whether I'm not quite ready to throw myself into that endeavor again consistently over a period of time. But I feel they were very simple thinkers, actually. Their cleverness was their faith, their purity of heart, their humility. So they were able to actually follow directions and see results. So it's not that the method isn't right. It's just, am I able to follow the method? And it's really interesting. I was just I was just with the class, and I was watching one student, and it's just so fascinating how we hear things. So if you hold this for a moment. So the instruction they were given, and we showed them, was to place one hand on top of the other and rest their forehead. It was for a back extension exercise. And what I got was a lot of other things. And I'm watching it. And so they're doing a completely different exercise. And it wasn't bad. We just maybe, we tried different cues. But again, that difficulty we have in following directions can break down in many different ways. So again, the type of souls they were, that they were really good at following directions. And I guess we can think about the qualities that make a soul good at following directions, things like fearless, faith, trust, humility, simplicity, purity. So are those qualities there? We're so used to just relying on one thing. I've got to be smart. that's actually not one of the qualities in the list. So it's what I need to check in myself.
Could you, it's again so interesting. Are you reading my mind? Because I was thinking about the power of faith, actually. Um, what is it about faith that is such a, that it, because that in itself is a power. And it was interesting, we were talking about, this realization they would have that they're masters, creators. Can I feel that as well for myself? Because I mean, even just that word faith, for some, I'm not sure what souls think of that word. I mean, there's some other connotations around it, but it has a very different feeling in this study.
So the full phrase we use is faith in the intellect. So the way we've maybe heard of faith in other scenarios was a bit more like blind faith, that there is no evidence or the physical senses can't give me feedback, but I'm going to believe in this and throw myself into it. And there's a lot of hope, if you will, that it's true. Whereas faith in the intellect, which I think these souls had, is a very different beast. Um, we say, if I see it, I'll believe it. And we're referring to the physical eyes, scientific evidence. Um, but imagine having evidence that's just as solid, it's just not scientific and it's not detected by the physical senses, but it's just as real. It can be experienced through silence, and our insight, our inner sense, our spiritual senses can see it very clearly. Our intellect, the eye of the soul, can see it very clearly. That's, I think, something that was very special in those souls. They had a very unique intellect, so they could recognize, see clearly things that maybe science can't necessarily validate, the physical senses can't pick it up, but it's still real. It's still very real. And this is a key part of spirituality, is for that, the non-physical, what we call invisible in the physical realm. It's actually there. The non-physical is very clearly perceived by the soul. So it's very obvious to them what to do.
So we often share, and we learn in the study about there's the power of understanding. I feel it's a part of this power of faith. Then there's the actual power of yoga. Could you share more about what power of yoga is, and again, how that is relevant in terms of just protecting my inner world to the point of becoming one who is really the one who's dictating what I'm experiencing in any situation, no matter what's happening.
So it's also connected to the intellect, the yoga we explore. And there's different ways to translate it. To yoke or link is literally the translation, but to develop a relationship with, to experience. So it's connected to the faith, definitely, to experience. So because of what I am connecting to or linking to or having a relationship with, it's creating an experience inside of me which is so powerful that how I'm experiencing what's going on around me or even inside of me is quite different or unique. So we've got cliches about this, that we see opportunities and adversity and things like this. The glass is half full, half empty. But through yoga, through that link of the intellect, it's not through imagining or hoping or intellectualizing, but actually that's my experience, is that I actually experience benefit in what is going on, and that protects my stage, my inner peace. It's when I feel something frightening or threatening is going on, but if I was experiencing benefit because of what I'm linking to, then that's going to be a great form of protection.
Can you share how one can discern when I'm in that experience that, it's an experience versus something I'm intellectualizing? Because even actually, to be honest with you, many workplaces, they have these policies, they have these signs everywhere, you should respect your customers, your clients, your et cetera, et cetera. It's a very head-like way of trying to operate. And I can imagine it's very laborious. But and that happens too in the studying, trying to, override some sort of inner obstacle or something that's one would call challenging the situation. And from what you're sharing about, maybe someone might find that abstract. Like, what is it that one is experiencing at that time?
I guess in the example you gave, there is the answer. I always found interesting if, let's say, there's a signal or a rule or a policy, is it only after I'm told the policy or the rule or get the signal that I start to try to operate that way? Or was I already operating that way and that simply affirmed? That to me is a huge sign of whether it's happening naturally through this link or whether I'm trying to think my way into it. So, back to the original students, they were pioneering this. There was no rule book. And so they had to rely on that yoga and that faith to figure out, okay, this is because of what I'm experiencing, this is how I will operate versus having the operating manual and trying to honor it without actually having the inner experience. So I always feel if the direction is affirming rather than, oh, I need to act that way because I received the direction, that's a huge sign of whether it's actually coming from that yogic link.
So I know that we're talking about yoga as to yoga, to connect experience. And I know in context of just even having the experience of being a soul gives me power. Could you share about, for many who may have not taken the course, maybe they have, but how is it that connection to God, the Supreme Soul, which is a big part of what Raja Yoga is about too? Like, what's happening that one has power? And I can see how sometimes it can go into the sensitive territory. Does that mean God's helping some and not helping others? I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, the Supreme Soul is such a wonderful being who operates sensibly. It's all I can say. So, talk about inner protection. That soul is never threatened. Um, they are completely stable constantly. No one can ever destroy their stage. Nothing. You can defame God till the cows come home. Most of us, if we were defamed to the degree that God is, we would be crushed. Our heart would be crushed by the defamation. We defame that soul so much. They did this. They're responsible for that. They're horrible. They're great. Whatever. But that soul's completely impervious. So when I am connecting to such a soul, it's a very interesting thing, this idea in yoga that we're very deeply colored. We're very easily influenced at this time due to a lack of power. So let's use that to our advantage. Let's at least have ourselves be colored or influenced by really uplifting, sources, if you will. And so the highest possible influence is God. That soul is the embodiment of complete stability. Nothing is going to threaten that soul. So in yoga, when I am genuinely connected to that soul, I literally am colored, or that connection draws out that capacity in myself. It becomes stronger and stronger, and anything else begins to melt. So that's the simple magic of yoga.
Could you share then, in terms of that link, how is it that the more I have that awareness of being a soul, that makes that link effective?
So, yeah, the other point you brought up, does God favor some souls over others? No, no. It's just we seem to have a lot of diversity and again, following direction. So he's like, you know, if someone is located somewhere in the city and they're giving out free What would you like today? Free chocolate?
Sure.
Okay, free chocolates. Really, anyone who shows up, they get a free chocolate. They are not going to discriminate. Show up and you get it. They're not going to move from where they are. You've got to come to them. That's the only condition. But you get a free chocolate and they send out very, very clear directions on how to reach them. And yet not everyone gets there. Ones who do get the chocolate.
Some don't have time.
And some say, I don't have time for this. Yeah. So what to do? You know, he cannot give up his power, which is to remain spiritual. He has to stay in a spiritual state because that's the solution. If he leaves there, we're hooped. So he has to stay there. We have to get to him. So he says, become spiritual, follow my directions. I'll tell you how. And you can absolutely connect to me. You have to come to me. I will give you very clear directions on how to do it. Yes, some say I don't have time. And for the majority of us, we spend a lot of time just sorting out the directions.
So I know we're running out of time, but I'll sneak in one more question because a soul might say, but I don't have the power to connect. And yet, so, I mean, like, I know the answer, but just for, I'm just, just seeing what souls could be feeling. What would, what would you share for souls? Like, what is it about it that, is there some sort of bridge?
Yeah, none of us have the power to connect. so, so timing. We're back to timing.
I knew you.
Yeah. Because spirituality is the opposite of physicality. We've talked about this before. So in physicality, holding on is a sign of power. But sorry, I got that wrong, didn't it? Physicality, holding on is a sign of power. In spirituality, letting go is power. So it's a very difficult thing for us to do, to let go. Just reflect on that yourself when something gets stuck in your head and someone says, you gotta let it go. And you go, I know, but I can't. So we don't even have the power to let go, even if we recognize we need to. So the first thing we saw again with those lovely original students, we call it renunciation, but they just, it was their time. They were having something called disinterest. And disinterest gives us just, it's probably the first power we get to launch this thing is disinterest. It gives us just enough to let go just a little. And that starts to get the ball rolling. Because we all are pretty weak. And so the only thing we can really have is disinterest. And that, when the disinterest is growing, it says, my time, it's my time. It's my time to start on this journey.
I lied. I have another question. Power of a mother. Because we often say in this organization that put mothers in front. What does that part play in terms of, is it part of getting the ball rolling, or is it sustaining the momentum? And this is the last question.
Yeah, I suppose that has to do with the bridge question you asked. But if it's my time, um, the powers of the mother, the approach of the mother, the qualities, the maternal qualities are wonderful at nurturing a little spark of power. If there's a little spark of power and we do something violent, we'll destroy it. If there's just a little spark of power, of light, the qualities of the mother will breathe more and more into that through the understanding, through the patience, through the love, through the acceptance, through the recognition, breathing more and more light into that little spark. So it's a very, because if you just slam down at that point with the father, even though it's what slowly has to happen, the spark will go out. Just the unworthiness, but that's another conversation.
Thank you, Judy. So have a little reflection.
One of the terms we use for our inner world is our inner kingdom. It's a beautiful invitation to experiment, to create, to emerge the way I'd love the world to be. That peace, that love, that acceptance, that creativity, that leadership, that benevolence, that compassion, whatever qualities I feel come together to create a beautiful world, I can create that starting with the self. I am the first fortunate recipient to experience the way the way I'd love the world to be. Putting that fortune back into my own hands and using spiritual resources to create that inner kingdom. The foundation is always the same, the sense of self, bringing a leader into my inner kingdom, the self, I, the soul, the master of my inner world. That's where the journey begins.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Judy. Thank you for those online. I know we've gone way overboard, but wanted to let those know to save the dates. There is the Raja Yoga full course in Hindi that's starting this weekend. So it's 2 weekends, half days, 13, 14, 20, 21st, 12 o'clock to 3:30 at the Inner Peace Center. If you check the Eventbrite, BK Calgary, or if you check the Calgary website, you'll be able to find the registration link for that. Then there's also Learn About Meditation. Lovely workshop that's held at the Academy. The next session's on April 27th. It's 12:15 to 1:30. And I believe that we're trying to have it on the fourth Saturday of every month. So I believe we've been able to secure those days for the next few months. So we'll update the website for that as well. I'm not sure if there are different sessions each time, if someone wants to go to back ones.
Yeah, I think repeating things is always lovely, even if it's the same. The topic, the title will always be Learn About Meditation, but I'm sure that it will be different because of the souls that are there.
I'm quite certain that there will be a Raja Yoga English Foundations in May, but we're just updating the website. So we invite souls to check out the website, the YouTube channel. We always have the drop-in sessions for English and Hindi. And so thank you for joining with us this evening. Om Shanti.